This conference will now be recorded.
So since we already have a fairly full room, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I would say probably about 15 to 18 is a rough guess. We'll start early and the latecomers will just have to catch up by listening on the to the recording, which, by the way, if you didn't check and you do listen to this recording on the telephone, and we now have at least 2 people I'm aware of who fall into that category who have written to me and said, I can't connect. You will need to reload your YouTube app. And that should do the trick. Just, I don't know how you do that, but you go to the app shop and you reload your YouTube app, and that should, if you're having any problems listening to us on the through your mobile phone, that should sort you.
They don't need to reload it. They need to download the latest version.
Well,
If you say reload, they might very well have it on their computer already. They need to download the latest version.
No, don't get confusing issues. We're only talking about the telephone. We're not talking about the computer. So you don't have to worry about the computer, I don't think. We haven't had any problems with the computer. As far as the phone is concerned, if you have the app on your phone, then update that app to the very latest version, please.
Correct.
Okay. Now, before we get started, I want to give you some relatively breaking news from yesterday, which may impact some of you, which is good news. And that is that the Medicare issued an NCD that stands for National something Directive. I forget what the C is. But anyway, it's how they make their announcements with these NCDs. It's all a bunch
coverage determination.
Yes, that's it. Thanks, National Coverage Determination. It's all a bunch of alphabets. Anyway, they indicated, if you read the notes carefully, which I really haven't done, I should say, but it was passed on to me by one of the members of the advocacy team that I work with. They address repeat testing. And what they have now said is that they recognize that it is necessary to do repeat testing. So they will consider repeat testing, which now means that it's no longer for genomic somatic sequencing, one cancer once in a lifetime. It can be one cancer more often in a lifetime. But this is only Medicare. So for those of you who are not on Medicare, I am still fighting the fight with Foundation Medicine to see what sort of deals we can get you. The answer is we probably can. I cannot make any representation. They will ask you to fill out financial assistance forms if you're not on Medicare. And you should go ahead and do that, even if you think you don't qualify. And if you've already done a test and you have reason to update it, they'll probably cut you a deal. And if you keep me informed, I can stay on top of it for you. Having said that, the bottom line is that as your cancer morphs, if it does, you should now be able to get a reasonably priced or free update on your genomic sequencing, your next generation sequencing, without too much expense, which I think is very good news. We I've been working with a group to try and get this done. So I certainly don't take any claim myself, but it's an issue I've been very interested about, and certainly FMI has lobbied, group has lobbied. As Peter and Len will know, I wrote a letter to Zero today to ask them how come we never heard their voice in any of this, because they're supposed to be the people who are doing this on the Hill. And that's why we give them all this money, so that they can represent our interests on the Hill. But they seem to do one thing a year, which is to get the Department of Defense funding, which is significant. I'm not putting that down, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. Now, there's one little quirk, which I don't think will affect us in any way, but breast and ovarian cancer have been approved outright. However, the Medicare administrator, coverage administrator for for each regional area has to approve all other cancers. I don't think there will be any issue with respect to cancers, certainly prostate cancer, and any cancer that has a clear BRCA determination or a clear Lynch syndrome determination. Cannot imagine it. And I'm just trying to get a little more clarification on that. It would have been nice, as Len said to me yesterday, if we would have been first class rather than second class citizens. And that's one of the things I think we've got to get Zero to handle. But we're not. But as far as the practical aspect in your pocket, you should be good. Okay, anybody have any questions on that to Len or myself? Okay.
I'm so confused. I'm going to call David up tomorrow and I'll clarify it, I think.
Well, when you say...
I don't want to spend the time now. I just wanted some clarification on my situation, but I plan to call David up tomorrow and talk it through with him.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I mean, yeah, I would. For most of you, it's best if Peter and David know each other, they have a personal relationship. But for most of you, if you do have issues with Foundation Medicine, run them first through me, because I may be able to answer a lot of your questions rather than going straight to David. If you want to call the company, that's fine too. But what we don't want to do is to have everybody that participates in ANCAN bothering our main contact there directly, because we will we'll lose some of our well-being, some of our, you know what I'm trying to say, some of
Yes. Agreed.
Okay.
Lose some of our goodwill.
Goodwill. Thank you very much. Thank you. I knew there was a reason you joined this call, Mr. Franklin. Thank you.
Just to correct your grammar.
Thank you very much. We'll lose some of our goodwill. Right. Exactly.
You're Jews.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm just really pleased about this, because it's cropped up enough times amongst our people, our participants, and they really needed to do something about it. And we picked up on it when they first approved next generation sequencing. Also, I think, but I'm not sure, but it's not very much money. If you haven't been germline sequenced for an inherited cancer, you can probably be germline sequenced, and that's covered, and then genomic sequenced. That's another thing that comes out of this. The germline sequencing, depending on who you do it with, runs from between $200 and $1,000. It gets more expensive if you go through Ambry or some of these companies where the test has to be ordered by the doctor, that are a little bit more comprehensive. But it looks like those tests are covered as well, because they recognize they have to distinguish between germline and somatic. All right, enough said on that. I would like to, there's one new name to you, not to me or Peter, because he was on our call yesterday, but that name is Russ. And Russ, I don't know your last name, that's okay. But if you are up for this, we would be very happy to give you a little bit of time to talk about the situation you're in right now, and we'll go from there. Are you game to tell us a little bit about your disease and how old you are and where you're treated and all the other good stuff?
Be happy to. That's why I'm here.
Okay.
My name's Russ, and the last name is Smith, and I'm in Londonderry, New Hampshire. Okay. I'm just about 1 year post RALP. So I had the radical procedure robotic done on February 5th of last year. Let me read down my vital information for you guys. So I was diagnosed in November of last year. I had my test done. The biopsy was 11 of 12 samples were positive, had a 4+3, and grade 3 surgical margins were negative, but it did have seminal vessel invasion that they found during surgery. I had my surgery done at Manchester Catholic by Dr. Munoz, and at the time of surgery, the PSA was determined to be 12.5. Post-op was 4.3, grade 7, 60% positive with one seminal vesicle that was invaded. Decipher test, unfortunately, is a 0.66, which is on the low end of high. Post-surgery was first 0.01, then less than 0.06. The next 3 months was at 0.06. And as of 1/9 of this year, it was 0.08. So, that's when the worrying really started, because it went from undetectable to borderline to things are rising. And if the pattern continues, and in my next 3 months, we've agreed to do 3-month instead of 6-month intervals now. In April, I'll probably be at 0.1. So just an update from last night's call that I contacted my primary. I have not heard back from her. I asked her for a referral. I called my urologist and asked for a nurse or a doctor to call me back, or my doctor to call me back to get that referral that I need. If not, I'm going to force my own appointment with a medical oncologist just to have a plan in place if and when the progress continues to be a 0.01, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, 0.1. And, that's the update for, where I'm at today. And I don't know how much more I can add. I'd be happy to add if anyone has any questions.
Just a couple of clarifications. I didn't take it down quickly enough. When was your surgery?
It was February 5th of 19.
Okay. 15OP. Okay. So, one of the issues, Russ was on the call last night, on Peter's call, and one of the issues is, when do you intervene? When do you start? And the biggest issue for Russ has been trying to get an appointment with a radiation oncologist and the radiation oncologist at Dana-Farber that Russ wanted to go to wouldn't see him because his surgeon doesn't think you need to intervene until 0.1. So why don't I throw it out to some of you guys here who have had the experience of seeing your PSA rise after a radical prostatectomy? And the question is, at what level did you intervene? At what level would you intervene if you had your time again today? And how easy was it to get the follow-up appointments? Maybe Bill Franklin, because I think that this falls right in his bailiwick.
Yeah, Russ, I had a similar situation with mine after my radical prostatectomy, but mine was a little bit higher, right after the radical prostatectomy 6-week mark when they took the first PSA test. I had mine was 1.6. So, and my surgeon had told me she didn't think she got everything anyway. So it was something we were expecting. And so I was already involved in this group discussing things with them. So my insurance had no problem setting up a consultation with a radiation oncologist. So, but that being said, yours is already. I'm sorry, my daughter came in while you were talking. I apologize. She distracted me. I didn't hear everything you said, but she's cooking my dinner. So, so yours is already a 0.8. I thought you said, or
Yeah, 0.8.
0.8. Yeah. So
0.08.
Oh, 0.08.
Yeah,
Okay.
0.0.
And your doctor wants to wait till it's at least 0.1. You said.
Yeah.
Huh. So
But,
what chemical recurrence is 0.2, right?
True, but
So,
with a 0.66 on my Decipher, and where I was at the surgery, I have a pretty short leash. My doctor even said, my surgeon said, most surgeons would have you into some other treatment at this point, but I don't believe in it. So he's kind of a cocky surgeon. He's got a great track record. I think he did a really good job on the surgery. I had very little problems after surgery, urinary wise. And I think he did a really good job, but I think he's also being just a little cocky that he's not willing to turn me over to an oncologist at this point when he thinks it may stall at some point and he'll be successful. So I think there's some ego involved. I have very good insurance. I have Cigna, probably platinum level. My wife is a teacher, and they've covered just about everything so far. So I can go through them, and they have a patient advocate at Cigna as well. But after last night's call, before last night's call, I was just going to wait to April and see where I'm at that point, and let them, the doctors, decide what my fate was. But today I took the reins again and said, no, I want to get a second opinion from an oncologist at this point, and be prepared when it becomes 0.1. And
right.
and hopefully it doesn't. I've seen a lot of. I'm on a couple other sites that are forums for support where people have had the same path I have install at 0.08 and retract back to 0.06. So I don't know what the future is, but I do know what my scores are, and I'm realistic about what potentially could happen or will happen, and I want to be prepared for that and have time to make decisions and pick the right people.
Right. Now, insurance aside, just totally lay aside the argument of will my insurance cover it or not. If I was in your shoes, again, mine was a little different, but if I was in your shoes and getting the help from this group right here, I would say go get that second opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, and insurance should almost definitely pay for a second opinion.
I'm not worried about the insurance. I just need
Right.
to, get my surgeon, just kind of bypass my surgeon. His job is done.
Yeah. So
And
any oncologist you go to is gonna do probably a full panel blood workup, but definitely is gonna test PSA, right? And
of course,
everything else. So they're gonna do the test anyway. So that's part of your second opinion. You go to an oncologist. I did the radiation as my secondary treatment. So if you choose that path, we can talk about that further. So
how does it work for you?
it worked, I guess. Well, I did androgen deprivation therapy with Lupron for 2 years, concurrent with the radiation treatment. So I started on Lupron first because
Mhm.
mine was 1.6 post surgery, but in the next I think 12 weeks it tripled. So my doctor put me on Lupron, and I was on Lupron for a while before the radiation because I was recovering from surgery, and they don't want to do radiation treatment until you recover full urinary continence from your
Right.
surgery. So I was
Right.
waiting for that. I had great results after surgery too. So
Good. And how'd you tolerate?
radiation comes with its own side effects and things like that. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to recover from the surgery, so
well, I tolerated the radiation itself fairly well. Unfortunately, I had some after effects that I still have today. So
yeah, I'm still working. The urinary is fine. I've got pretty much 100% control. Don't wear pads. Haven't since 2 days after surgery. The ED is a whole different issue. Still hoping for recovery there. But if I move into the next stage of treatment, then you just set back any little gains that there's been over the last 11 and a half months. So.
Yeah, and again, based on what you decide to do in the future, there's other discussions to have. If you have ED concerns, that's a different conversation on like what my doctors did versus some of the other guys in this group, because we've had similar conversations in the past.
Yeah,
some guys will tell you that their doctors didn't talk about anything about sexual function later, or erectile dysfunction, or anything.
Pre-surgery, no one really discussed it, and I mean, I knew that was a result, just from my own research. But I was told that there was going to be, a recovery. The nerves were spared, but you still have an amazing shock to the system. So I have the pills, I have the shots. Shots do work, but they're a pain, as if anyone's ever been through it, but they do work. And I'm seeing some signs of recovery, but of course, as you go on to any next phase, potentially it's going to be a setback. But it's better to do that, to take the treatments and live than to not. So if that's what you got to do, you got to do it. Right. And
you guys are both, you were diagnosed pretty young too, right? You're still a young guy.
I was 51 when I was diagnosed.
Even younger than me. I was 57 and now 58.
I'm 56, so I was diagnosed just 2 months before my 52nd birthday, so almost 52. So
hey, the upside is every time I went to the doctor, it's like, well, you're young and in good shape. I mean, where else do you hear that? You don't hear that at your family practitioner. It's you're old and you're fat there. But
yeah,
so there's an upside.
I hear you.
It's Larry. Hi, Russ and everybody. I'm confused. You keep saying you wanted to go to see a radiation oncologist for a second opinion, and I don't see actually where is really the first opinion. I think you had. It seems to me you had a urologist. Did you go from the urologist to the surgeon?
Yes, I have. My urologist is one of the top surgeons in New England, and that was my first opinion. Before surgery, I went to a radio oncologist at Dana-Farber. after last night's discussion, I decided not to push going to a radio oncologist, but I think I'm better off to go to a medical oncologist, to determine other options before radiation. And so that's what I've been, worked on today, was getting a referral to the medical oncologist.
And why exactly do you need the referral? I know that it seems like you didn't specifically have a specialized genitourinary medical oncologist on your team or controlling your team. It seems
No.
that you went from a urologist to the great surgeon, whatever, and now you're maybe a radiation consultant. But I still don't see where is that one person who's looking at the totality of your disease from being an expert specifically with prostate cancer. And
I don't
thinking,
I don't have that. That's what I'm trying to get now.
yeah, and
So
I think that's what I was going to say, that I don't think you need a referral. I think you can make an appointment to see a medical
I think
oncology specialist.
I think I can too. And the mistake I made was going to a medical oncologist that knew I had a urologist surgeon, and his staff contacted their staff to get the referral, and blocked it right there. So I just have to go, in round. I can make my own appointment. I just have to find my own oncologist to be my quarterback per se. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I wanted to think.
Yeah,
Somebody primary to really take the whole picture in charge, from the surgery through the radiation, through the other alternatives, through the urologist, somebody who's going to be an expert specifically in prostate cancer as a quarterback. That's all I wanted to say.
I agree 100%. The way that the path I was led through was I went through my family practitioner, found the PSA, went in 1 year from about a 3 to a 13.1. She sent me directly to a urologist, did the biopsy. I hated that urologist. I did my research, found the best one in New England. I went to him. He recommended surgery. I wanted a second opinion, so I went to a radio oncologist, and the radio oncologist agreed that surgery was the best option based on my test results. Went through surgery, and then from there I just went through my 3-month checkups until here I am today with the numbers that I have, trying to manage my own case, and I'm trying to find somebody to, other than the surgeon, to be my advocate and leader to get me through this. So I think I skipped a step. I think I should have probably found that quarterback before, doing the things on my own.
Quick question. What was your PSA before you had your surgery? What was the highest it reached?
13.1.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, not good.
All makes sense. Well, is there anyone else that would like to submit any tips to Russ on how best to navigate at this point in time before we move on? Okay.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your input.
We're happy to give it to you. Keep coming back to either Peter or myself, because you're sort of halfway between each of us.
Yep.
We'll help you in whatever way we can, and we can direct you to docs. I mentioned a couple of names for you yesterday in terms of medical oncologists at Dana-Farber. And we do have some good contacts at Dana-Farber. One of our advisory board members is a genitourinary med-onc there. I think you're smart in getting yourself ready for what comes next. And as we mentioned to you and Bill as well, Bill Franklin too, we do have an under 60s group that I've signed you on to as of yesterday for recurrent advanced prostate cancer, and our moderator is right next to you on my screen. Give us a wave, Ken Anderson. We can't see if you're waving or not.
No, I heard you, Rick. I did. Russ, I wouldn't beat yourself up about doing, most guys do the same thing as you, is take the advice of the urologist. And there's a lot of good urologists that do, in fact, remove prostates. So at this point, though, you have the time to go ahead and search out a good genourinary medical oncologist, and I would do that. You have the time, I would do it.
Yeah.
So you're taking the right path.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys' advice, and I'm taking it. So.
Okay. Well, don't be a stranger. Keep coming back. There's a lot of great guys with a lot of knowledge, and feel free to stay with us. We talk about the ins and outs of advanced disease on here, so you may want to learn something. But if you find that you don't want to hear that right now, feel free to leave as well. We won't be offended, believe me.
I might do that if it gets depressing, but okay. I think for the most part, I'll hang tight.
Okay. All right. So let me just make sure I've got everybody's name written down, and then we'll do the roll call, and we'll find out who would like to speak tonight. So I do think I have everybody's name on my list. And just out of deference, we'll start with Jake. Jake, anything you'd like to talk about tonight?
Nothing for me tonight, Rick. Thank you.
Okay.
My son's coming over to visit, so I'll probably be leaving early.
Okay. I'm sorry. What did you say? Who's visiting?
My son.
Oh, great. The one from up north that took all your tools?
That's the one.
Okay. You make sure he brings them all back, Jake.
No, I gave them to him. They're his.
Well, I know, but he took one that you didn't want him to take. You got to get that back, man. The drill.
Oh, I got it. He brought it back the other day.
I feel better. Okay. Peter, anything for you?
Nothing new. Nothing new. My appointments finally came through for oncology, so that'll be next week.
Okay. Okay. Which one? The guy who?
I've got both of them came through. One came through while we were talking about 15 minutes ago. So
good.
Yeah.
So you'll interview both of them?
I hope so, yes.
Okay. All right. Dennis Correa, anything for you?
Yeah, Rick, I would hope to have a little discussion about the generic drugs issue that Len kind of spurred
Okay.
my interest in.
Okay. Les Shelderup, anything for you tonight?
Not tonight, thanks.
Okay. Scott, you're going to give us some good news and an update, I believe.
Yeah, if you have time.
We have time, for sure. Ken Anderson, anything for you?
I'd like to add to the generic drug this recent article that was written about diet has no impact on cancer.
Okay, we will talk to you. Dennis McGuire, anything for you?
Nothing new.
Okay. Carl Foreman, anything for you tonight?
No, thank you.
Oh, okay. Larry Fish, anything you'd like to talk to us about tonight?
No, Rick, I'm good for tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Jay, anything for you?
You're muted, Jay. You're muted.
There.
Yeah.
Okay. I could. I visited Antonarakis, and I could hit the high points of that.
Okay. Well, we'll hear that. and then we'll follow up with Joel Blanchette, who probably will also have something to say about Dr. A. Joel, anything else you would like to talk about other than your experience with Dr. A?
Yeah, just a 2-minute update.
Okay, we'll take it. Jerry Pelfrey down in San Carlos, Mexico. Anything for you? I don't see. Is your microphone?
No, nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight. Len, anything you'd like to talk about?
Well, I'll join Dennis on the generic drug conversation, no doubt.
Okay. Tad, anything you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I can give an update and then just another general question on direction.
Perfect. And Bill Franklin, anything for you?
No, I'm good. I'm just listening for a little while.
Okay. Well, it looks like we've got a few people that want to talk about this generic drug issue, but before we go there, I'd like to get an update from Shref, who we haven't heard from for quite some time, and who happened to write to me and Jake recently and tell us that he had good news. And we always like good news on this call. So, Shref, why don't we kick off with you and you can tell us what's going on in your world.
Okay, I don't know if you guys remember, you probably do, Rick. I had metastatic prostate cancer, 22.6 PSA. That was diagnosed in November 17. And immediately went on Lupron and Zytiga. And it worked. I mean, it took everything down to undetectable, my testosterone and my PSA. But it almost ruined my health. The Lupron was so bad I couldn't. I'd get a shot and it'd take me a month before I could even walk again. If I did get back to walking, just it was tough. So, anyways, found a good radiation oncologist who fought with my insurance company, and after a year on ADT, I had radiation therapy, and so then we went back, I stayed on the Lupron for that was back in January, February of last year, and then stayed on it till December of last year. And then they can't find any cancer by scanning or blood tests. So I took a vacation from the Lupron and the Zytiga, and I feel like a new person. I've been off of it for 2 months. And I'm starting to think I can talk now. Before I just smile and look at people. I couldn't hear, couldn't put two thoughts together. So that's wonderful news, but that shouldn't happen because I was metastatic. But Rick, you pointed out I was oligometastatic, which made the whole difference in getting treatment beyond the ADT, i.e. radiation. So I want to thank you and the group for pointing me in saying that it's different if you have fewer than 5 or maybe fewer than 4 lesions. And that was the whole big thing. I got a doctor to go to fight for me, and he got the insurance company to eventually approve the radiation treatment. I had 28 rounds. I forget how many GYs or whatever it's called. But there's no signs of cancer at this point. But I'll be taking a PSA, of course, every 3 months. But going from metastatic, stay on ADT until it quits working, then go to chemotherapy and down that road, this is a wonderful. I'll call it a miracle. But I wouldn't have been there without your help, Rick. I really appreciate it.
It's not just me, it's all these guys on the call, and we are really, really happy for you. You may have to change that picture that goes with your ID, Scott.
Okay, well, one thing that I don't even know what you got.
Go ahead.
One thing that the only good thing about the ADT was my hair started coming back in on my head. So
Yeah.
I left it grow long. But, you know, the ADT just ruined my hips. I mean, I've got to get it back into some exercise and try to build up some muscles and do all that kind of stuff. Now that I have some mobility and feel halfway alive, I think I can do all that.
Where did you finish up doing the radiation at Cleveland Clinic?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that is really a great update. Anybody like to say anything to Scott?
Hey, Scott, it's Dennis Correa. I didn't hear what your current PSA is.
Well, the last test I had was the end of November, and it was undetectable. And I haven't had the next one. I think we'll get it Friday of this week.
Excellent.
Okay, and the radiation you got, where was what was it, and what did they radiate?
They radiated. They put a double dose. It was IMRT, I believe, with another initial there. And so they radiated the lesion, which was right next to the prostate that was on my pubis ramus. And then they radiated the prostate and the lymph nodes, the bed, because I was had a 9 Gleason and a 5, and wasn't a candidate, I guess, for anything but the chemicals.
Do you know what scan you had done?
I'd have to look at my records to tell you exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I hope everything continues to go the way it is right now. Stay, sir.
Yeah, so far, yes.
This is Peter. So I'm a Gleason 9 as well, and I've done intermittent hormone treatment for about 5-6 years. I'm back on now. I agree with you. Boy, when you get off of it and your testosterone starts coming back, it's like you all of a sudden got a new life. I mean, I think I salute that. I know the feeling. But I just want to mention my experience. The first time I was on, it really kicked my butt. The Lupron and I was on Casadex. I was like you. I was miserable. It put me in an altered state. But I've been on and off about at least 4 times. My testosterone kept coming back each time I went off and so forth. And each time I went back on, I could tolerate it much better. And now I'm on again, and I'm tolerating it real well. I'm on double dose. I'm on the second line, and I was on Zytiga all of 2018, and I tolerated that very well. So if because you're Gleason 9, if you have to go back on at some point, don't use this first experience as the be all and end all, because as long as you're sensitive and it's doing its job, you might have a much better experience next time.
Thank you for that advice.
Okay. Well, anyone else want to say anything else? Anything to Scott?
Scott, when was your last Lupron injection?
My last Lupron injection was August 30th of last year.
Oh, okay.
3 months injection.
Good.
And do you know your most recent testosterone measure, Scott?
They didn't do one after when I started back in 2017. And I immediately practically went down to 0 testosterone, undetectable testosterone, and undetectable PSA.
Okay. And do you know what it is now that you're off?
No, no one's, I don't know if I'll get a test, if they'll order one or not.
Well, you can ask for one.
Yeah, you should ask for one. Bill Franklin's exactly right.
Okay, I'll do that.
I had to ask, not my urologist, he was doing it anyway, but my primary care, I had to say which ones I wanted, right? So of course PSA, but hey, throw testosterone in there and all the other good stuff. But I was going to joke with you and say I had a full head of hair before Lupron, but but these guys on the camera can attest I did not have a full head of hair when they first met me. So that was 4 years ago.
Oh, well, anyway, it's all good. And Shref, don't be a stranger. Come back, keep telling us how good you're feeling. Keep us up to date as you get your PSAs, and let us know how your testosterone is doing. For other people on the call, one of the reasons why we always suggest that you get a testosterone measurement before you start hormone deprivation therapy, androgen deprivation therapy, is so that you know what your original baseline was, and that way you know how you've come back. And
I'm sorry. I did know my baseline. It was 917 before any treatment.
Okay. So, at least that way you can measure where you go. And 917 was a nice healthy dose of testosterone, although, as most of you know, the testosterone measurements are really erratic, and they can vary by 100, 200, even on the same day. So somebody could be 900, and then you measure them later in the day, they're 700. So there's all kinds of things that affect that testosterone measurement, but it is a good guide. And it sounds, Scott, like your testosterone is bouncing back, even though you don't know what it is. That's what it sounds like to me. So
congratulations, Chef.
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay. What was that?
I was just telling him that prayers do help.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's move on to this generic drug discussion. And it was Dennis that raised it. So Dennis, I'll let you kick it off.
Well, yeah, I'm raising it now because of what Len had presented to us in the past, and I did listen to that discussion of I guess she was a journalist, investigative journalist, and had that conversation with the doctor about what she has found out about the generic drug industry, and it started me really thinking about it. Mostly because I am on, oh, by the way, that was Catherine Eban, I think was her name, in her book that she's written, Bottle of Lies. And it's all about the generic drug industry And the stuff that goes on there, everything from where these things are manufactured to what some independent sources have found as contaminants in these drugs, as well as our own U.S. Department of Food and Drug, FDA, processes for granting approval to these drugs as replacements for the brand name drugs. And in my own instance, it was the Zytiga that I was been on for several years. It's been working fine for me. And when my insurance company said they're no longer going to cover it, that I have to go to a generic, my doctors agreed and prescribed an abiraterone acetate. And, you know, to tell you the truth, I didn't even really look at, well, who's making this thing when I first got it. So I did look at it, and it's a company called Novadoz, Novadoz. And so my next step is to see, well, let me find out where this company is. Well, it says they're, I think they had a subsidiary or so, U.S. Sales and Marketing in New Jersey. That's called MSN Manufacturing. Now, they don't actually manufacture it there in the United States, though it's manufactured in India. And I can't find specifically where. It's either Hyderabad or Myanmar, India, is where these things are actually manufactured. And from my personal experience, when I was fully employed with GE and traveling the world, I spent quite a bit of time in India because we had some manufacturing facilities there at the time. And I was a compliance assurance manager to make sure all of these facilities that we had acquired were doing what they were supposed to do and living up to GE's expectations as far as meeting all of the health, safety, environmental regulations. And my first trip over there, it was very interesting from the standpoint of the cultures over there going on, but the manufacturing facilities are out of the cities. I mean, they're not in, well, it used to be called Bombay, which is, can't remember the name of it now, and Delhi. Those areas pretty well developed. But the manufacturing sites are out of these cities, out of the towns, and very, very primitive, to say the least. Most of them don't even have working toilets. So, you know, I don't want to offend anybody of Indian heritage, but it's a very poor country. And I mean, the word hygiene just doesn't exist in their vocabulary. So now I started looking further and say, you know, what might be my options here? Where can I find one of these generics manufactured in the United States? And it's amazing the number of companies that come up in the United States. However, it's almost impossible to figure out where they actually get their drugs from, at least from my use of the internet here. I could probably spend more hours. I probably spent about 24 hours already trying to look at this and figure it out so that I can make a more intelligent decision about which one of these generics is less likely to have any problems associated with it. That's my personal, you know, immediate concern, but I think the FDA issues probably really need to be brought to light relative to they just accept whatever these manufacturers provide them with, paperwork, test results, made up or not, as fact, and allow, that's their basis for approving these drugs. It's a highly competitive industry. The Zytiga, I think, is over $1 billion a year, the Zytiga alternatives. There's incentives to getting in there first and being the first one to get the approval. They get exclusive, I think, 6 months exclusivity. Nobody else can market it over that period of time. It's billions of dollars. I mean, that they're making here. And they wine and dine them. They make all their reservations. And when they do go to inspect these facilities, they know well in advance they're coming. And I know that concept because basically that's what the facility did when I went there. And even with that, I mean, it was pretty bad. So having firsthand experience, not from a pharmaceutical industry standpoint, but from another manufacturing industry, which, I mean, they literally did not have restroom facilities. And one of the first things we did at GE and I was doing was building sanitary wastewater treatment facilities for the plant. They were very sensitive to having the appearance of something showing up on the front page, and here's this GE plant, and they're discharging raw sewage, or worse than that, the employees are defecating on the ground. And then to this day, the data that I came up, I believe, was greater than 40% of India do not have working toilets. So that might put it in perspective.
Let me go to Len. I mean, I hear you, and we recognize the sanitary conditions are very different. I mean, what I don't know with respect to manufacturing these drugs overseas is what sort of regulatory influence the Federal Drug Administration might require an audit. Len, you posted the, for those of you who are not signed up to our blog, I recommend you all do that, because Len actually made a post on this book, which is how Dennis heard about it last week. And you can go to the blog. I put the link in the chat window, or if you're on the telephone, just go to our website, ancan.org, and go to our blog, and you'll find the post recently made by Len on Bottle of Lies. Len, what are your thoughts and your comments?
Yeah, since I left the pharma industry, things have changed. And in this very strongly anti-regulatory environment that we live in today, the FDA just doesn't have the resources to do the kind of quality control checks that Dennis was just talking about in the overseas markets. And just like a lot of our consumer products have been offshored to India, China, and Vietnam and other areas, so have the generic drugs moved from the U.S. offshore. When Jim Ward if you remember last week, Jim Ward was very nervous about moving from brand to generic Zytiga or abiraterone, and we kind of assured him that, oh, it's good. Dennis in particular said, well, I haven't, it's been working fine for me. And so then when I posted that blog, Jim sent me an email with the first word or utterance was UGH, ugh. And so it stirred up all his anxiety again. But anyway, I told him, do what you can to try and find out if there is a U.S. manufacturer for the generic Zytiga, and tell your druggist that's the one you'd like. And he identified Mylan, a U.S. generic company. Now, as Dennis just mentioned, I hope that Dennis checked it. I mean, not Dennis, that Jim Ward checked it fully, and that it isn't just being bottled in the U.S. by Mylan, and labeled, but also manufactured. So, if you can get a Canadian or a U.S. or a European drug source for generics, I would do the research and figure that out. Now, Catherine Eban in the book said one of the biggest problems is the FDA gives a 3-month notification to the offshore generic companies that they're going to do an inspection. And then, of course, they start falsifying data, hiding bad data, and the FDA, having read her book, I suppose, is now experimenting with unannounced inspections or very short notice inspections. So hopefully that'll change things a bit. But yeah, there's some nasty things going on. People will do anything for profit.
Len, you're with your background, the interesting thing, I did a little research on this, and not only the generics, but it's my understanding that the name brand, they still have to get the main chemical of Zytiga or abiraterone. That is the same no matter whether it's generic or the brand. Excuse me. The difference is when the brand puts in certain chemicals to aid whatever side effect possibly, and the generic doesn't. But here's my point. What I was reading, 90% of the main chemical in all of our drugs come from China or India. Now that's 90%. Now what they do with the rest of it, but the book I was reading on this was from the wife of a neurosurgeon who got fentanyl while I forget what he had, a brain tumor or something, and they used fentanyl. He died from the fentanyl. When they researched it, it went back to China, and by the time they got to quote where the source was, the building was empty and nobody knew anything. But they have recorded deaths on fentanyl from going back to either China or to India because, like you said, it's the wild, wild west. And we need to correct that, but all of us are taking those drugs. So I don't know, and Len, you can say yay or nay to this, but the Israeli company Teva, I've always felt was the best generic drug company, but I really don't know anymore.
Yeah, they've had some regulatory issues as well. I can't remember the details, but
they did. Yeah,
there was some scandal with Teva as well.
Yeah. So
Larry,
they're all.
Larry, didn't you say you wanted to chime in on this? Larry? Oh, he must have stepped. Oh, here he is. Larry, did you say you wanted to chime in on this? Could you be muted, Larry? I see your microphone is on, but I don't hear you. No, we're not, you're not.
Is that better? Is that better?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Well, sorry, Rick, I never said I wanted to chime in on this. I said I was okay for today. But you want me to?
Did?
Yeah, I did, but you want me to chime in? I'm curious, how difficult is it to, if you have medication how difficult is it for somebody to analyze that medication to see what it's made of? Is that a very expensive and complex process? That's just a thought I had. It's like so many regulatory issues, but distributing millions of whatever it is pills of metformin or Zytiga, how difficult is it to get an analysis of that? Is
Very
that
difficult.
it's expensive to get an analysis? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, that was my chime.
There's
Bye.
something called the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, USP. You'll see a lot of supplements have a USP seal on it, which supposedly is a verification that the product contains the ingredients that it says it contains it in the right proportion. I wouldn't buy any supplements without a USP label on it personally.
Len,
Yeah,
do they verify generics as well?
I would guess that they do, but I mean, if you wanted your particular bottle of pills to be analyzed by them, like Larry said, I imagine that'd be quite expensive, but I guess it's worth looking into. But I think the more important thing is um, how are you doing on the generic drug? And in particular, if you've recently switched from the brand to the generic, do you notice any differences? If you don't, you're probably okay. If you do notice differences, or if suddenly your testosterone level is fluctuating, or your PSA is starting to move up, whereas before it wasn't, that might be a sign that that generic is not working for you. I mean, in Dennis's case, I believe you've been on the generic for a while and you haven't any issues. So,
Yeah, that's
despite the
since
fact,
January, just this month I started it.
just this month. I thought you were on it for a
Yeah.
while.
No, I got the letter from the insurance company back in December. They were going to cover the Zytiga.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for you, so you've been on Zytiga a while and you've been well controlled. Hopefully, it'll continue to be that way. But if not, um, could be a point of discussion with your oncologist to see if he can get you back on the brand drug.
That's the other whole aspect of generics is, it's supposed to be the cost and having these things at a greatly reduced cost. But these companies are still making literally billions on this stuff. And I don't know. I guess they're what considered biological drugs, Len? It takes some time for them to get the what do they call it? The ingredients that go into it. Yeah,
Formulation.
yeah, the ingredients. Some of these facilities just do make ingredients like Novadose. They have 10 active pharmaceutical ingredient facilities, and then they have 5 finished dosage facilities. But
Right,
I
right.
can't find out where my bottle of drugs actually where it's actually made. I mean, if you can find it out, but it's one of 2 places that say that hydrochlorobenzene.
Dennis, there's a UPC code or a barcode that tells exactly all the way down to who. At least, Len, you might correct me, but I thought generics were the same as the name brand. If you've got that number and if you know what each column means, you can go right back to when, where, and who. But Dennis, it seems, I guess I've got to ask the question, and I don't mean this negatively, but what's the outcome? What are you trying to do?
I just want to make sure I'm getting a drug that's as close to the Zytiga and it's going to do exact same thing the Zytiga was doing, not give me additional side effects and so on. I mean, it's this thing for me, it's difficult. I realize there's a different size, it's a different shape, so I got to take 4 of them. But they're also, I handle them, and they're white, so the powder comes off of my fingers. The Zytiga had some type of a coating on it, and it was really, even though I had a 500 milligrams, it was a little larger than these were, but I could swallow it without much trouble. These, that sometimes I gotta make sure I'm really hydrated good in my throat and go down, and hopefully I don't get stuck halfway down, which has happened several times. I end up drinking 2 big glasses of water just to get the thing to go down. So number one, it's not the same from that perspective. It's not as easy to take.
Yeah, those are probably formulation issues, Dennis, rather than a problem with the active ingredient. So, you could always tell your doctor or your pharmacist that I can't swallow these pills. Do you have an alternative generic source for me?
Yeah.
And if they do, they'll give it to you.
How do they make that decision on where to go?
Excuse me, Dennis. I want to jump in because I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and we've got a few people that still want to talk about their own subjects. But is there anybody else who hasn't spoken on, who has not already talked on this issue, that has something they want to contribute?
Yes, I'd like to. So I'm listening carefully. I listened to the interview and so forth, and it caught my attention for sure. So I'm on darolutamide, which is a Bayer product. It says right on the bottle, manufactured by the Orion Corporation in Finland, Orion Pharma in Finland. When I go to search that, which I just did a few minutes ago, it turns out that they have manufacturing facilities in India and Russia. So I doubt the stuff is really made in Finland. So the bottom line is, it feels like we're all flying on the Boeing Max. And there's pharma companies who are running the show just like Boeing is. There is no oversight really. And it's and we're just praying it works. I mean that's to me what our big international world is these days. I don't know what else to do. I mean, we're on drugs and it's saving our life, but we gotta hope and pray. And I agree that there's a risk involved here. I don't know what else to handle it.
There is one point, and that is, don't you think that the top oncologists who we're trying to see, and we do see, they have their knowledge about which drugs are produced and which are real, since they're giving them to us, they're seeing all the patients, and you could ask your oncologist, and you can't get anything? You don't think they know?
I doubt it. They just don't have time to be tracking down where drugs are made and whether there are any inspection violations. They don't consider that part of their job. And frankly, it isn't. It's really more the responsibility of the major pharmacies that are selling this stuff to us. They're the ones who, they should know who they're buying the drugs from, and are they meeting FDA inspections? And the doctors can't do everything.
Just to change it on the same subject in a way, but I want to know from you guys, because I know there are a lot of us that are on Lupron. I heard that there's a shortage of Lupron. Now I don't know what the deal is, but when I left Mayo, they were having a shortage, and the person I talked to said, yeah, we're having trouble, and so are some other people. Anyone heard anything about that?
Well, I have not, but I have heard of a couple of people recently who have been switched from Lupron to other drugs. We had somebody on last week, I think, who said that they would move to Zoladex, and they weren't sure why. Maybe that's the reason. Let me just finish up with this subject first before we go anywhere else. Anybody who hasn't spoken on generic drug issue that wants to say anything, or if not, we'll move on.
Yeah, I was going to say when Lynn was talking about whose responsibility it is, I would think not only the drug distributors, but I think our insurance company should have some sort of responsibility in there. If they're paying for the drugs, and a lot of times they push you toward a generic for the cost, right? So I think they have some responsibility there. If you're getting something that's not effective or is, shabbily produced because they pushed you toward it and something happens to you medically, I mean, I guess you can't sue an insurance company for malpractice, right?
Well, I'm going to have the final word here, and I'm going to elaborate on Bill. I don't think it should be so much the insurance company as it should be the responsibility of the specialty pharmacy that distributes this and makes a bunch of money on it on the way. And they are a pharmacy after all. And to me, they're the ones that should be checking these drugs and where they're made, because they're the ones that are actually dispensing it. And we will for sure be having a webinar on specialty pharmacies. And I think that is a very good question that we can pose to whoever we put on that panel as to what sort of due diligence they do and as to the compliance of these generics to what they're supposed to be.
Hey, Rick, I gotta tell you, there's not a one of them that will come.
Well, I have one that will come at least. So
have you posed that question though?
I'm not saying that they'll answer the question, but you're telling me we won't get anybody on the webinar. I'm saying I think we will. And if they don't want to answer the question, then that's another issue. But I don't accept that we won't get any specialty pharmacy representatives to come on a webinar. Let's move on. We're not here to argue over that point. Let me just go back to Jerry's point. Does anybody have any information on this so-called shortage on Lupron?
I bet you in China there's going to be shortages of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, because of the virus?
Yes. Yeah, because of manufacturing shutdowns and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but we can't speculate. This isn't the right place to be speculating on the impact of the coronavirus, I have to say. I just really want to stick to the point because we've got people that do need time, and I want to make sure we give them the time. And happy to talk about stuff that really we know about, or at least have a little bit of knowledge. So let's keep moving along here. Let's go to Tad, and then we'll go to Jay Mills and Joel Blanchette, and then we'll go to Ken Anderson about this diet and this diet and prostate cancer issue. Tad, you had an update for us, and you had a question.
Yeah, a little update. Okay, I got my scans done today.
Good.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and we're in MRI, so it wasn't bad. I'll get the discs tomorrow. Y'all were telling me I always get the discs. Okay, I also have a little thing. What I got is a stage 3C. Is that right? PT3B N0, and then I guess I have to wait for the scan for that M. Am I starting to get this stuff?
Right. So that means they diagnosed you as stage 3 T3B. I have to look up what the B means. I know that. I remember that. Who knows what anybody know what the B means?
It's okay. I did just look it up a while ago, but
hold on a minute and I'll tell you. I've got it right here. I'm just pulling out. I'm pulling out the. Here we go. T3. If the cancer has spread to the seminal vesicles, the stage is T3B. So what that means is that they found that it's an important finding that you had cancer in the seminal vesicles, like Russ did at the beginning of the call. So it's worth that's something that you should always be pointing out when anybody asks you that you had T3, it was outside the gland and it was to the seminal vesicles.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then, right. So MD Anderson does take Medicaid, but they said they didn't take my form or whatever. But I got on with my case manager with United Healthcare, and we called them, and that was okay. And then we called my local doctor because MD Anderson wants your local doctor to contact them to kind of get the ball rolling. So the insurance, they will most likely approve it, and so I guess it's just all in the mix. So I guess, is that okay for now? Is there anything else I need to be doing for right now? Am I just then they said because MD Anderson, I think they said something, they'll set me up with a doctor. Should I ask for someone in particular, or just go with the flow, or what do y'all say to do now? But in the next week,
The first thing I want to say is great job on following through and getting all this done. Really. I'm very impressed that you've done it. And I think there are other people on this call in this group today who will endorse that. And I'm really thrilled that you're following through, Tad. So give yourself a big pat on the back.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, really. Ken, wouldn't you agree, Ken Anderson?
Yes, absolutely. It's not an easy task, but it's one worth fighting for sure.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it's great that you persisted with your insurance. And as we suspected, probably you can get into the MD Anderson. I think that I would ask to see that lady, Anna D'Aparicio. Did you watch that 18-minute video of her?
Some of that, I do have her webpage saved and everything. So
yeah, I mean, we could try and get you into Pool Corn, but I think with your disease and where you are, and hopefully your case isn't that complicated. And she did impress me on that video. I don't know, has anybody else watched that patient power video with Anna D'Aparicio? I sent it out to Tad last week. But if you go to patientpower.com and the prostate cancer page, you'll find this interview with her, and she's a colleague of Paul Korn and Logorathis or whatever his name is, and I like what she had to say, and she seems pretty compassionate, and I think if I was going to ask for an appointment, that's who I would ask for. Okay. As to be your quarterback, Tad.
And I guess that, I don't know when that would be. Do I keep my appointment with this local guy?
What concerns me, when you say this local guy, is that your
it can wait till next week. I mean,
or is that the old urologist?
I'm sorry?
Is that the old urologist or is that the medical oncologist?
To the urologist sending me to this radiation oncologist.
To a radiation oncologist. Look, it can't hurt to have more information.
Okay.
What bothers me is that your doctors haven't really been very forthcoming in your treatment. and
Right.
in the where your treatment's at. I mean, given that you had this RP back in September, I mean, you're only just finding out that you're T3B. And these things they need to share with you, and it doesn't do. So I can't really say much about the radiation oncologist and what he's going to tell you, but you might find it useful from an education standpoint. And then the other issue is that if you were to do the radiation at MD Anderson, it might be too difficult for you anyway to be able to find a place to stay there and do all of that. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
We
there's
may
gonna
be
be a
able
lot.
to help you with that.
We'll
But,
just have to see. Yeah.
yeah. Who else has some input for Tad on? But I do think, by the way, that your medical oncologist, who's going to be your quarterback going forward, that definitely needs to be somebody at MD Anderson. And
Yeah.
anything you do and anybody you see, if you have to see somebody locally in Austin, then it should be somebody that your GU MedOnc approves. Peter, what would you say on all of this?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to weigh in on this one. So, yeah.
There's always
Okay.
next.
There's always next week. Yeah. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Silent bunch tonight. Until we start talking about generic drugs, and then everybody's got an opinion. Okay. Well, Tad, keep moving along, and if you get stuck along the way, call Jim or call me. And did you let Jim know that you've done all of this?
I don't think so. I'm confused also with emails and text numbers and all this stuff. I'm still trying to get organized with who's who and contacts and everything.
Okay, well, you've got Jim Ward's number. You've got Jim Ward's email address, because I know I've sent it to you if you can find me. But you let him know about the progress you've made, because I think he'll be happy to hear it too. He's the guy that went to law school in Austin, so he knows your area a little bit.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Ready.
All right. We'll move along. How about to Jay, and then we'll bring Joel into this, and then Joel, you have a question yourself. So Jay, kick us off.
Okay, I went to see Antonarakis at Johns Hopkins a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and I had crossed glycinate and have been on Degarelix instead of Lupron for now 19 months. And since I crossed the 18 months line, the original plan was to be on 24, but wanted to examine, again, the goal we had talked about was to be on ADT as long as I needed to be, so as to never need to go back on it. And with I wanted to review with a good GU MedOnc, and I had wanted to meet Antonarakis anyway, so I made an appointment to review that with him. And
can I just interrupt with a point of clarification for some of you who don't know Jay's history? Jay is doing adjuvant hormone therapy after having done radiation, high dose, and IMRT. So this isn't the same situation of those of you who have recurred. This is all primary initial treatment. It's the same type of program that I did. And so that's why Jay's saying, well, he hopes he never has to go back on anything, which, thank God, to this date, I haven't had to. But it's a little bit different to what some of you are dealing with. And Jay's been on his hormone therapy, and to which his ADT, to which he added Zytiga now for 19 months. Sorry, Jay, I just wanted to make sure the guys understood that.
And that's where I am. And that there was a study and a couple of years ago that came out of Canada that said that outside survival and recurrence, the rates were at 18 months were as good as 24 months with less, of course, endurance of side effects. And so I was re-examining that and wanted to do so with a good GU med onc and wanted to meet Antonarakis anyway. So I had a great meeting with him on that issue. It was he reviewed the studies, and he said that he felt that it would be wisest to stay on the 24 months, which is where I had come to the conclusion myself as well after looking at it. He also was great to talk to about almost any question you can imagine. But I think the other key points I talked about, I had from a prior hernia surgery, had some testicular pain that persists, and I was wondering if that might, it would come and go, and I was wondering if that might be from aggravated by any of my treatments or medications, and he thought not. Then the other issue was looking at my genetics. I had looking at both my from my blood and from my core sample. The analysis showed that I had nothing worrisome, and but he was able to explain the genetics much better than anyone had ever explained it to me. And a high 3+ rate on the receptors, which means it's highly sensitive to androgen deprivation. Anyway, he also left the door open for if I had any burning questions to be able to email him, and that he should get back within 24 hours, which is a great thing to have. The one question that I did not ask that Rick, you and I talked about was going on if someone was on as a monotherapy, apalutamide or enzalutamide, would that be an effective cancer suppression as ADT and so on? And we don't know where his mind is on that, what he thinks of that. I was looking at, I know there's a study in Brazil that's taking place, phase 3. There was a phase 2 that Taplin did for intermediate for monotherapy that was showed efficacy, but a phase 3 out of Brazil is being done right now, and the other arms have I can't remember if it's apalutamide, enzalutamide, and abiraterone, and then the other one, of course, has the ADT as well. But they're trying the monotherapy for comparison to see if it does, because it would not have the side effects. And I understand that Joel is on something like that right now. One of those darolutamide, apalutamide, or enzalutamide as a monotherapy.
Right. That's actually Len is on darolutamide, but he's not using Antonarakis, but he's Memorial Sloan Kettering and other places. But one comment on your emailing Antonarakis, he's very good. I probably sent him at least 6 or 7 emails, and I just started with him back in October. I keep him briefed on every step of the way, and he's appreciative of that. He responds right away, lets me know what he thinks, and so far so good with him. I've been very impressed by his professionalism, and I'm a leader of a prostate cancer support group in Sterling, Virginia, and us two support group. And one of the guys wrote me about a month ago and said, "Hey, Antonarakis is my doctor. Also, my daughter went to medical school at Johns Hopkins, and she now is a primary care physician in Chicago, and she recommended Antonarakis to me, and that's why I'm going to see him. So at least I know another person now who's seeing Antonarakis. I'm sure Rick knows a lot more, but anyway, he's my situation is that I had prostatectomy 8 years ago, no other treatment at all. Went to see Antonarakis, and I'm now taking 5 scans, including an MRI a couple of weeks ago for radiation planning, and no soft tissue cancers found at all, with 5 scans, including a PSMA PET scan and an MRI. And so today they called me and said, hey, because of your 2 hip replacements, our CT scan we took of you for planning of the SBRT, we need you to come back in because we can't see what the scans are saying because there's too many problems with the scan. So I'm going back in tomorrow for a 15-minute scan, going back in on Friday for a test run. Then Monday through Friday or Monday through Wednesday of next week, I'm having True Beam SBRT done to my left iliac bone, where as the only spot of cancer that I have supposedly. So the treatment is totally different than what you're going through, but I was at least in 3+4 with a PSA. My highest PSA ever was 3.8.
Wow.
Joe, what was the your discussion with Antonarakis about going on hormone therapy?
Well, he knew that I had refused hormone therapy and radiation up front because I had seen a medical oncologist, radiation oncologist twice, once before my surgery and once after my surgery. He wanted to start radiation right away. And I said, well, how do you know the cancer is there? And he couldn't answer that. So I forgot about him because he actually went away and somebody else replaced him. But so Antonarakis knew from my first appointment with him that I was not in favor of treating cancer blindly. So he basically said, well, you only have one spot of cancer. Let's do the radiation and then we'll see what happens. So he is of the philosophy that he can cure cancer with immunotherapy and radiopharmaceuticals and PARP inhibitors, as opposed to having to use ADT if he can help it. So that's why he's put me on radiation only and not any other drug so far. I mean, I may still need ADT if my cancer comes back and the PSA goes up and we don't know where it is. But back to your point early on, Rick, if FDA approves PSMA PET scan, does that mean that Medicare will be able to pay for my next PSMA scan?
Well, if they approve it, yes. But so far they haven't. But the word is that could well happen this year.
Right.
I've heard that from a couple of people, but so far we don't have that. But I just want to go back because I misspoke when I talked to Jay this morning, in that it wasn't monotherapy AR, it was radionuclides and immunotherapy that he felt were the tools that might possibly avoid using hormone therapy because the hormone therapy clearly affects quality of life. Now, the question that we cannot, I don't know, is under what circumstances would Antonarakis prescribe hormone therapy? I mean, are there circumstances? Does he think a man has to be on hormone therapy and have failed and become castrate resistant before he becomes eligible for radionuclide therapy or immunotherapy? That's really, I think, the interesting question, Jay.
Right, and I don't know the answer to that. I can ask him next time I see him, but that I don't know what are the factors that make him decide which way to go.
Yeah, and that's the question, Jay, that you might want to put to him too, and see where he stands on it.
Yeah, I'm thinking that from the literature, from looking at the apalutamide, darolutamide, enzalutamide as a monotherapy, the studies, phase 3 are just being started, or started last year. They'll be 2 years out, a year out from now, that they should have some results back. And that would be perhaps, if I'm likely to have a recurrence about that time. And if that's what I would look to do, perhaps, is to have a lower side effect profile.
Well, let me just say this. Cross that bridge when you come to it, because we don't even know. Yeah. We don't even know. First of all, we hope you're like me, you're not going to have a recurrence. And remember, your PSA is going to go up, Jay, when you come off of all of this, just like mine did. And Mac's going to tell you, it'll go down, and you're not going to believe him and make yourself quite bonkers, but it will come down. And then we'll see whether it goes back up again after it goes up and down. So expect it to go up and then come down. And we're going to be out there 3 years from now, and who knows what treatments are going to be available 3 years from now. Not even my main technical man on this call, Mr. Len Sierra, is able to tell us what's going to be happening 3 years from now in the world of prostate cancer treatment. Is that right, Mr. Sierra?
Absolutely. I have no crystal ball. What was that Johnny Carson character? The great.
Oh, yeah. What was Johnny Carson's character called? I forget.
The great something.
The great something or other.
None of us remember.
Isn't it Karnak?
Karnak.
Yeah.
Karnak, yeah, right.
Even he couldn't.
Lynn, are you on darolutamide only?
No. I'm not on monotherapy. I'm also taking Lupron.
Okay, I forgot.
And by the way, if you do use those drugs, monotherapy, you'll need to do something prophylactically to prevent breast enlargement. There's very high incidence of gynecomastia when you go use monotherapy.
Right.
So I'm going to go quickly back because I want to circle back to some stuff that's gone into the chat window. But I'm just going to check with Jay and Joel if there's anything else they want to raise about Antonarakis or anything else.
I did want to say one thing, that when he walked in, I have a large medical record. I've visited a lot of doctors. He had read that thing very thoroughly, and time and again during the conversation, he would bring up an important detail that I was very impressed at how quick a study he was and how he absorbed everything. And very much a gentleman and pleasure to work with.
Okay. Well, he knew his customer. He knew his customer. Okay. Go ahead, Joel. No, you go ahead. You're up, Joel.
I was just wondering, Jay, if Rick had recommended Antonarakis to you, or was it somebody else?
I had on the calls, I had heard good comments about him, and I had actually recommended my uncle, who lives in Virginia, to go to see him, and had good things from my uncle as well. And so took both of those as a good reason. And then from both Lynn and Rick, I'd heard good things about him. So those were where I'd heard good things.
Okay, thanks. I'm done.
I do want to move on. Joel, was there anything else you had?
No, that's it. I'll let you know in a couple of weeks with my radiation, how that went.
Please do. I want to raise, Jake signed off. I guess his son is there, but Jake put a link in the chat window. We will post the chat window, by the way. So Jake put a link in the chat window to a website called Daily Med that has information on FDA guidances and what's more. I'm not, since he's now left us, I'm not sure what he had in mind to point us towards. Jay, I'm going to just, we're getting a little feedback from you, so I'm just going to silence your mic. Peter put an interesting comment in the chat window, which, Peter, well, I'll read it. He says, I just did some cursory checking on Lupron. It appears that AbbVie farms it out to Takeda Pharma of Osaka, Japan. Interestingly enough, AbbVie and Takeda's headquarters are very close to each other in Chicago, Peter. They're probably within about 2 or 3 miles of each other in Chicago. Takeda seems to manufacture in India, but not sure if the Lupron comes from India or not. This takes quite a bit of digging since none of us ever see the actual bottle from which the Lupron injection is taken. Once again, the whole damn drug industry appears to be a crapshoot what to do. Jake, I just saw this. Jake put another link in the chat window that says, refer to the link I provided where you can research meds, including generics. So that link, if you're on the telephone, is, well, it's a fairly complicated link. It's dailymed.NLM.nih.gov/dailymed. So it looks like it is an official website, and it does look like you can look a little bit at the background to these drugs. So I know my co-moderator, Mr. Sierra, will look at this a little bit over the next few days and probably have something to say as to what is in there. And Dennis.
I don't believe it's going to tell us where the drug was manufactured.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on that website doing my research too. It's pretty good. It tells you what the FDA is doing in generic drugs.
And you can download the label as well, but I just did that, but it's still chasing your tail. It's pretty obscure.
Yeah, the only thing it tells you about Lupron is that it's manufactured by AbbVie and TAP Pharmaceutical Products. Then you have to do further research.
Yeah. And TAP, I think, Takeda.
Takeda,
yeah. Okay. Well, we've got 5 minutes left, and even though Ken sent me a quick message saying he doesn't want to address it, and we may not have time to get into it, Ken, why don't you just tell us what caught your eye about this diet study? It was, I know, addressed to, or the one I'm thinking of was addressed at men with low-grade prostate cancer.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. It doesn't really, Jim Ward had sent it to me. It doesn't really apply to this group.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of press in the active surveillance group. And we've talked so much about diet over the years here, and at some point we will get Professor Bill's brother Buzz back on, because he's a PhD in animal nutrition, particularly in cows, and with a huge interest, obviously, in dairy. And so he's been researching the impact of nutrition, in particular dairy, on prostate cancer. And he keeps telling me he's going to have it ready for me, but then he says he finds more stuff to read. And as an academic, he can't stop. So this has now been going on for about 2 months or 3 months. But when he does have something to say, I will let you know ahead of time, and we'll bring Buzz onto the call, and we'll let him make his presentation. And if we think it's worthwhile, we may even give him a webinar. So why not? But he spent hours and hours and hours researching this diet issue. Literally.
Ken, did you get any medicinal value out of those organic tangerines and oranges that I gave you when you were here?
Ken looks like he's frozen.
Yeah, I think Ken may have frozen.
How wasn't my citrus?
It must be those organic oranges and lemons and grapefruits, Peter.
Well, this is dairy right here. It's Kahlua and cream, so I'm kind of wondering what Buzz has to say about that.
Ken, you came back for a second. Are you with us? You have to switch it. You're not switched on. Your mic isn't switched on your phone. Looks like he's. I'm looking at the attendees list, and I now see
looks like he dropped off.
I think he dropped off as well.
So, Rick, I was going to say that when you were talking about the chat log, for people that don't know this, every time you have a go-to meeting on your computer, at least with Windows, and there's a chat log, people put something in the chat log, it saves a copy of the chat log to your documents file. It's a default setting on GoToMeeting. If you don't go in there and change it, that's where it's at. So you can go look in your documents file under Windows and see if you've got a bunch of old chat logs.
Yeah, and you probably will. But of course, if you guys are on the telephone, then it won't be saving to anything. And those,
that's right.
Actually, and also the people that listen to this later on. And so for you all, we put it on our website in the Prostate Cancer Forum, which is also open to anybody who wants to post anything related to prostate cancer on there. So, and if you do let me know, and I'll make sure people see it, because people don't regularly check that, as far as we know.
Hey, Bill, what are the file naming conventions for the chat log?
Yeah, so I went to look and see, and I recently completely reimaged this computer, so this is the first call I've been on. So I don't know what my old ones look like, but it says something. I think it says GoToMeeting in the title, if I remember correctly.
It says, I can tell, it's a rich text format.
Rich text file, yeah.
And it says chat log board meeting, and then it says the date.
On mine it says chat log and Ken Barniskis room.
Yeah, that's what I have. Huh, very good. I didn't know that.
Yeah, chat and Ken Barniskis room. You're right. I had one that had board meeting. Yeah, chat and Ken Schmier room or Barniskis room. Absolutely, still correct. Okay, yes. All right. Well, look, guys, we had a big group and we finished on time. We have a minute left. Who would like to fill that minute?
With 60 seconds of distance run?
Okay, well, we will be back. We will be back next week in February. I think it's I got to get myself a new calendar. If
It's the
anybody's
3rd.
got extra 2020 calendars, they can send one to me.
Yeah, they're on your computer.
I know that. I do know that.
February 3rd. February 3rd.
February 3rd.
Yep, Monday, February 3rd.
I have a wall one here, which I just am so used to looking at. But yes, February 3rd is the next meeting.
There's 29 days in February this year, Rick. I know it's not on your calendar.
I know. Maybe I'll get lucky on Sadie Hawkins Day. You know, who knows?
What do you guys think of the idea of contacting this woman who wrote the book and see if she wants to do a webinar on drugs for us, an interactive type of thing where we can talk to her about not only generics, but label drugs and what the government is doing and how safe everything is.
Couldn't hurt to ask.
So who's going to pursue that one?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay, thanks, Len. All right, Len, my man, and everybody else. Len, I'll give you a buzz in a couple of minutes about more things.
What was that?
I just opened a bottle of Old Spice.
It's those Kahlua and creams he's been drinking right the way through the meeting.
That wasn't
right,
me.
No, that was Russ. I thought it was a tidy bowl man, but who knows?
Okay. All right. Okay. We'll see you all in a week or so. Take care. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Okay.
Roll Tide.
Yep, take care, Russ.